Okay, how's the microphone doing today? I'm back in this spot, which does not seem to have the greatest lighting. Gonna remember that. I thought maybe it was just that day, maybe. No, but I don't like it today either. Oh well. We shall survive. So, oh, what did it say? Oh, there we go. 2 people in here. 4 people liked it already. Interesting. So, just in here a little early to chat. We've got a couple minutes until 5. Again, I forgot to wear my watch. Always forgetting something. I think I need to make a checklist for these nights because I'm constantly running back upstairs to get something that I forgot, like a lighter. So, yes, and excuse my dirty fingernails today. I was digging in the dirt. Hello. Nice to see you again. There we go. Yes, I was in the garden a bit today, digging in the dirt, kind of rescuing some tulips. Kind of a chill day. Read a little bit. Did a little studying for my driver's exam again. Did I? Wait, I think I did get your email. I'm behind on emails and doing some studying lately, so I have not replied to everybody. Oh yes, email. I feel like there was something I was going to say. Oh, somebody donated to me. I was so surprised and happy. Did I leave a? I don't think I left a link. I'm still setting this up. I set up an account at buymeacoffee.com/Kendall Brenneman, and it's mainly going to be a little subscription area for the diary readings that I've been doing, kind of getting that off the ground. But you can also just donate through there, which is pretty cool. And yeah, I know, my first one. It's exciting for the smoking videos. So that was nice. Oh, my brother just texted me. Oh no, I can't get back to him right now. I'll have to text him when we're done with this. Yes, so set that up. Got a little donation. Oh man, I think he wants a reply, but I can't. Hope he's not going soon. He's sending me something and gonna go to the post office. I should bring a second phone out here, darn it. So we'll try to keep an eye on the time today. 'Cause, yeah. What was I gonna say? Oh, yeah, that super chat thing too. That I have no idea if that's on or how you do that, but that should be an option here as well if you want. I appreciate any support for the readings and my channel. And check out, I'll have a new video up tonight. It's a shorter one, but kind of a fun one to make. And still going to keep those kind of regular. I know I missed last week, and I probably will be missing a little more weeks because I need to give myself a little more time to work on things and do some other things. So we'll see, still trying to do it weekly with a week off here and there. Oh, I missed part of that, but I will see that later. Can start reading in a moment. Wish there was a way to text my brother back. Darn it. Today I have some real cigarettes and some of my herbal cigarettes. So I am not going to smoke as much as I did last week. I mean, that was an extra long video too, but a little too many cigarettes. So I'm going to do 3 today, I think. And hopefully, I read through the chapter. It does seem a bit long, but we'll see what we can do. And I'll start off with a real cigarette. I'm sorry, I keep missing these messages. It'd be nice if they just kind of stayed and went up, but I get it. Perhaps that's not always convenient for live stream things. So let's see what time it is. I think we can get started now, and there are a couple people in here. So I will start reading. I think it'd be nice. How do I get the not always framed the same here, so but I think it's nice to have the book and the picture too. Okay, let's go. Thank you. Could be better. I need to work on my demo reel and see about getting actual work. But I mean, this past year I've kind of seen it as a kind of permission to relax and do other things, take a break. But I must try to get other work at some point. If you know anyone casting, let me know. But yes, this is my dream role, so you'll get me smoking until I get it. All right. This is a lucky strike, by the way. Okay, back into it. In the first year of the novitiate, which I still can't pronounce right, struggle seemed to go deeper and ceased to be mainly for physical perfections. It turned into a lonely war against pride and self-will. Since after vesture she never again heard her given name Gabrielle, she often had the illusion that she was contending with a stranger and that the stubborn characteristic she fought belonged to someone else. Only her conscience performed familiarly. It watched her doing something new, like a motion picture camera recording without pity or prejudice the laborious development of someone called Sister Luke. No novice left the mother house during that formative year. The house was the cradle of the religious life, and the community itself was the mold that pressed, restrained, and supported the wavering white forms that slowly shaped to strength. The community, which in postulant days had appeared to Sister Luke as a vast, amorphous body with 400 eyes and ears, revealed its hierarchy outline more clearly now that she had gone up the ladder one step. A new group of postulants, over whom she took precedence in speech, was below her now, and above her the first professed, who had made their first vows as she would make them at the end of the year. The fully professed were, like the local superior and mistress, the perfected top-level beings who supervised hospitals, schools, and homes for the aged and foundlings, and, outside of duty, spoke with no one except themselves and the superiors. Above all, like a central sun, was the revered person of the Reverend Mother Emmanuel, with whom any sister might speak without first asking permission from her immediate supervisor. You're late. That's unacceptable. Although separated by speech privileges from whole segments of the community, you were nevertheless in it and a part of it all the time. You slept with it, worked with it, ate and prayed with it. There was no escape from it. Where the community was, there was the Christ. Except for some major reason approved by the superior, you could not absent yourself from community life. You might long to go off in a corner, or read or meditate all by yourself, but this could never be. You were learning the hardest lesson of all, to live in harmony with women of all ages and of every kind. Sometimes the realization that she would never be alone again, physically alone in her own separate pool of silence, would dismay Sister Luke more than any other aspect of the life against nature she had chosen. Even more, she thought, than the culpa, which was its weekly trial by fire. The culpa was the proclaiming before all your sisters of your failures in the rule, faults that resulted from negligence, forgetfulness, or rashness, rather than from deliberate intent. And after you had disclosed all that you could remember, the sisterhood was invited to complete, for charity's sake, the record of failures forgotten. The culpa was obviously, as the mistress of novices had explained, a training in charity, forbearance, and humility, but to Sister Luke it was a personal trial by fire. It was held in the chapter hall every day, except Sundays and feast days, when most of the sisters were assembled for spiritual reading. Each nun had her day and time assigned, and 10 or 12 could be heard in any assembly period. The dozen whose turn it was prostrated themselves and waited until the superior of the house rapped twice with her gavel. Then the oldest in the group rose to one knee and began the travail of telling on herself. Ma mère, I say my culpa. Sister Penances accused herself of speaking unnecessarily 10 times, of eating a chocolate from a patient's box, of opening a window in the recreation room without first asking if everyone wished more air. Sister Jean de Christ accused herself of the breach of poverty of spilling milk twice in the refectory, of walking with precipitation to avoid being late for devotions, of forgetting to kiss the floor and say 3 Glorias when she let doors slam, and all of it sounded like trivia wrought out of senseless scrupulosity until your turn came, and until you felt beneath your scapula the white-hot burn of humiliation which told you how much of your pride was still alive within you, and how far away was that perfection in humility toward which this weekly ordeal heated, hammered, and fashioned you. At first the culpa made Sister Luke think of guillotine days of the French Revolution. The spectator nuns sat with books of spiritual readings, instead of knitting, and seemed always to be absorbed in their pages. But their retentive memories could almost be heard clicking like small hidden projectors as they reviewed their versions of the culpa that was being said. Then those who had seen or heard something more would stand up, 1, 2, or 3 of them, but never more than 3. The culpa had rules, only 3 times. In a single session, might a nun be proclaimed by her sisters, and no one younger than she in the religious life was permitted to disclose a forgotten fault. Okay, that's getting a little close to my fingers. There. So take a little break, and then we'll do the next cigarette in a little bit. By the way, I would love to learn to smoke the little circles. That's always impressive. Let's see. Oh dear. I did read something recently about how if regular smokers are also smoking cannabis, it does something like to open up the lungs and actually kind of balance out the effect in some way. I have to look into that more. I mean, I'm not gonna be a regular smoker, but it's very interesting. I know cannabis does something with opening up your what do you call it? I can't remember the word. But that was interesting to me. I've been trying to convince my boyfriend to stop smoking so many cigarettes. But thanks to him, I have a couple here. After several months of the culpa had somewhat accustomed her to its dread, but never to its burning humiliation, Sister Luke began to see something heroic in the nuns who proclaimed a sister. They have courage, she thought. They carry it even beyond the point where Christ stopped. They state the failure in detail and name the name, whereas he said only that one shall betray, and it is one of the 12 who dippeth with me his hand in the dish. The body of the community eventually revealed through the culpa more of its composition, as she heard certain sisters proclaiming repeatedly, for the same imperfection in outward conduct, Sister Luke began to see where, in the community of life, the muscles, the mind, and the emotions lay. The sisters proclaimed most often for impetuous walking were those who had been sports enthusiasts in their former lives. The intellectual nuns, lost in the clouds of their private thoughts, were those most frequently proclaimed for refectory faults like forgetting to pass things at table and spilling the milk they poured absent-mindedly into coffee mugs. And there was one choir nun with a face like St. Cecilia's, who was regularly proclaimed for having been carried off by a bird song during a meeting of the teaching staff, or for having broken the grand silence by whispering, "Listen," when the tree frogs sang at night. The bravest of the emotionally vulnerable were the sisters who stood up together in the culpa and proclaimed each other for having gone out of their way to be near to one another, or perhaps for having talked together in recreation in a way that excluded others. The tormented but clearly spoken disclosures of a nascent affinity gave it the coup de grace which they themselves might not have been able to do, for the entire community would henceforth see to it that these two would be kept far apart. The pair would be helped to detach themselves from one of those spontaneous personal attachments which often sprang to life in the body of the community as unexpectedly as wildflowers appeared, now and again, in the formal geometric patterns of the cloister gardens. Sometimes when she knelt after her culpa and listened to the voice of a sister quietly reporting her faults she had been unaware of, Sister Luke momentarily lost her identity as companion nurse sharing night duty with that sister. The familiar voice would suddenly become that of a stranger, leaving her with the impression that she was listening to the voice of the community grieving as a single body over its imperfections. There was fear then, a quick quiver of it, that called the adrenaline into her blood. She ceased to exist for that moment. She was no longer Sister Luke, formerly Gabrielle Vandermaal. She was momentarily no more than a solitary cell situated somewhere below speech level, in a vast organic body which saw, spoke, and thought for her, and which cared for her with scrupulous charity while carrying her upward to an unknown place. The fear passed over like a moving shadow, quickly come and quickly gone. How could you be afraid of the community, she asked herself. It would be like fearing your own self or fearing the number 1072. After culpa, the community recited the De Profundis. She would enunciate each word with care, unaware that she pitched her voice a shade above the others so that she could hear herself saying in her own way, "Out of the depths I cry to thee, O Lord." Do the herbal thing right now. I mean, I do notice a difference. I think this one's like, it's lighter, you know? Yeah. Midway in the novitiate, when the novices were strong but not strong enough, the superior began to met out bigger penances in the culpa. From the saying of 5 Aves or a repeated fault, the penances now became acts of humiliation performed openly in the refectory. Sister Luke tried to think of them as a final tempering before a group would make its first vows and be sent away from the mother house to smaller communities that were much closer to the lay world and to its temptations. But each time she was given a public penance, there was nothing her mind could do to help her out of a humiliation that bit to the quick. There were 4 of these severe penances, and quite often in the final months, you saw all 4 of them going on at once in the refectory. The kissing of the feet of the 10 oldest nuns, the begging of the soup, the asking for prayers from all the sisters for help in achieving the holy rule, and the kneeling with arms outstretched to say 5 Aves, 5 Paters, and 5 Glorias. Was there anywhere in the outside world a training and tempering comparable to this? Sister Luke tried to find an analogy. There must be disciplined lives in the world, she told herself, but whose, and to what aim? All she could think of was the ballet and its training of those special muscles which held dancers on their tiptoes for incredible periods of whirling, leaping and dropping again to those 2 points of pain, lightly as birds from flight. But ballerinas were trained almost from infancy. They did not have 21 years of natural living to undo before learning to fly. The first time she was penanced to beg her soup, her entire past rose up in outrage. Years of impeccable service at her father's table flashed in her memory as she placed her pottery bowl on the left of the Mother Superior, knelt, clasped her hands, and waited until 2 spoonfuls of soup had been put into her beggar's bowl, then on to the next oldest and the next until the bowl was filled. 6 nuns, putting 2 spoonfuls each, could have filled it, but that first time there were 3 who thoughtlessly doled out a single spoonful, and then resumed their own eating. She arose and took a bowl down the table, remembering the Meissen soup tureen, I should have looked that up, don't know what that is, at home, and the silver ladle that put into each plate its full and steaming content with a single dip. When at last her bowl was filled, she returned to her place and swallowed the soup, as she knew she must, down to the last drop. She tried not to think how it had been tossed into her bowl from a dozen other bowls that had already been eaten from, and blanked out from her facial expression the revolt that rose up in her fastidious soul as she drank her dregs. One look of rebellion, she knew, would be enough to invite a repetition of the awful abasement, which she was sure she could never go through again, not even for the sake of the blessed Lord himself. My brother texted me again. But she did go through it several times in the final months of her novitiate. She begged her soup. She knelt to kiss the feet of the 10 oldest nuns. She burned through the mortification of asking her sisters to pray for help for her. And was it more harrowing to have to stop the pulpit reader when you make that abject request than to disturb the hungry nuns by laying your beggar's bowl beside them or signaling them to put out their feet to be kissed? Her imperfections that had brought on the penances were cut away from her as cleanly as if she had undergone surgery. She was seldom penanced for the same fault twice, but there were always others. She learned to see through her pain, beyond the strict observance of the rule, which was the inevitable result of those experiences, to something else that was being taught by them. As the pride of Gabrielle Vandermaal crumbled within her, and a feeling of her nothingness took its place, Sister Luke had her first haunting glimpse of humility when she looked at the prideless place within her that was being prepared for its growth. In the last trying months before vows, she saw true humility several times, but she did not know it then. Occasionally, when several novices were slated for penance in the refectory, one of the professed nuns in sober, startling black appeared in the white-robed penance group. Sister Luke would stare at the soup-begging nun, the involuntary exclamation, "What could she possibly have done?" almost escaping from her parted lips. Her surprised eyes would follow the dark figure of Grace as it moved around the table with the slowly filling bowl. She was unaware that she looked at one of the great charitable souls of the sisterhood who had asked permission to do this mortification, to show the novices how perfect humility looked when given to God with a smile. I don't know. Thus, in that year, besides earning her nursing degree and a diploma in psychiatry, the data of struggle accumulated within her. If her reasonable mind often looked askance at the smallest of the things she struggled for, she reminded herself that nothing was trivial in the eyes of God, and that the life of the cloister was made up of an infinity of small things that had an importance here undreamed of in the outside world. Each simplest act, each hidden intention, had to be cut to the rule and polished and perfected like the tiny stones of a mysterious mosaic, which had no meaning when looked at one by one, except that one by one they fitted together and suggested a pattern. The pattern was the formation of the nun, but she was too close to see it. Once on recreation, when she sat cleaning beans with her sister novices, her eyes wandered around the wide circle they formed beneath the trees. She looked at the young, flushed faces bent over lapfuls of beans, and listened to the exclamations of the fast-fingered ones who could string more beans for Jesus than others could in the given time. No one uttered a regret for not being able to stroll that day through the gardens. No one looked up from her aproned lap to the flowering chestnuts and the slow drift of summer clouds above them. Their discipline showed so sweetly without stress or strain it nearly brought tears to her eyes. It is almost an exaggerated thing, she thought, this discipline. It is surely more than any of us could ever need in the safe communities where we shall be. She could not know it then, on that summer day in 1927, that in little more than a decade, their ordered world would rock and twist like the epicenter of an earthquake, and that the walls she imagined would always protect them would crack in many places and fall in heaps of rubble to the ground. Some of these sisters who sat beside her would disappear in the Holocaust, not to be heard from for years, until at last a few would begin to appear one by one, out of Poland, Czechoslovakia, China, out of all the sad new godless lands called Iron Curtain, where first of all the cloistered had been hunted down. They would reappear with worn pictures of saints sewn into the hems of disguising lay clothes and rosaries hidden in their shoes, and the world, stirred by the stories of endurance, would stare at news photos of those blessed objects and wonder how those alone had got them through. Because that would be all that they, the Phoenix sisters, would be able to tell about their Calvaries. Prayers and faith, they would say. They would have forgotten how the steel had gotten under their scapulars. It was so long ago that they had learned to be nuns. She ignored her own discipline as she bent to the bean stringing she hated. She forced her fingers to work faster in penance for her revolt against menial work, and suppressed the memory of the sign the cook had nailed to the kitchen door at home, "Children forbidden to enter here." Actually, she reflected, it was less of a strain to spend the recreation period cleaning vegetables than to walk with her sisters and try to think of something appropriate to speak about, something that would interest 3 other novices in the same degree that it would interest you yourself. If you could only walk in pairs and speak with one at a time, she thought. It was a stern ruling, this no speech until 4 together. Yet how many times had she all but founded on that single small pebble of their Gibraltar-like discipline? All right. One more. Yeah, it's a little harsh. She looked across the circle at the girl who followed her in line for the weekly bath, whose eyes catching hers would sometimes reach out like hands. "Hold me up, Sister Luke. I'm scheduled for Culpa tomorrow, and I'm frightened." Her gaze moved on to the Irish girl who always drew near to her in the recreation, smiling ever like a saint over her heartbreak that her family could not be there when she would make her vows. "It is, of course, too expensive a trip from Ireland to Belgium," the Irish eyes would say. "So I'm going to be all alone with God, then, except, of course, for you, Sister Luke." And then, when the 3rd and 4th would join them, and the oldest in the group would start the conversation, the talk would be of something safely hung up on high, like the Japanese lanterns for Sister Eudoxie's Jubilee, or those wonderful artificial flowers the cancer patients had made for the fete, something general that would not rip open the secret places of their women's hearts. A stern ruling, she thought, but very wise. If just once any one of us let go, only one in the entire congregation, she reflected, was probably strong enough to risk the human touch without becoming attached. She smiled as she thought of the Superior General, who had become the center of her universe since the day in the refectory when she had lifted her eyes and had really seen the Reverend Mother Emmanuel for the first time. It was on one of her penance days, she remembered, when she had to beg her soup for coming late to devotions from the hospital. She had begun, as was proper, with the highest ranking, who was that day the Superior General, just returned from her annual visits to the affiliated houses in England, Holland, France, and Poland. Kneeling and waiting for the 2 spoonfuls of soup to be doled into her bowl, she had looked up bleak with despair. She was not expecting to be looked at. Experience had taught her that the higher the nun ranked, the more assiduous she usually was in helping a younger sister to regret her faults. Most living rules doled out the soup with disdain and frowned into space, as if annoyed at the interruption. But that day the Superior General's face was bent toward her and gently smiling. It was the kind of smile Sister Luke had almost forgotten existed. It reached down and touched her and seemed to say quite plainly, "Why, you poor little thing." It was the only time she ever came near to crying in her penance. From that moment her captivated eyes had followed the tall, spare figure whenever the Superior General was present in the chapel, the refectory, or the novices' recreation. And because she was looking with eyes of love, she began to see details. She discovered that the Reverend Mother Emmanuel's back never touched the back of a chair, no matter how weary she might be. It took her several weeks to gather this evidence of an inner strength that totally rejected comfort. Again and again, in study hall, recreation, or in the hospital when the Reverend Mother visited her nuns at work, Sister Luke would place herself where she could get a view of the back. The Reverend Mother's long black veil always fell straight down her back, straight down her flat back, held rigid as a cliff of granite, and there was always a measurable space between it and the back support of the chair she occupied. Yet somehow she always looked relaxed. In the chapel, Sister Luke saw another kind of strength. For the half-hour of meditation, the Reverend Mother Emmanuel's eyes never turned first to a book of spiritual reading. She could apparently enter into immediate colloquy with God without the help of inspirational phrases. The moment she knelt at her prie-dieu, she seemed to be regarding him directly. stealing looks at the venerated figures so still and lost in contemplation, Sister Luke understood how the early artist came to paint the graces, descending as rays of gold towards an upward face. It was never difficult to imagine, when the superior general was in colloquy with God, that you saw bright bands slanting down toward her in those grey dawns before sunrise. But it was in the recreation room that she saw the quintessence of the superior general's power, and felt most directly the regenerating force which emanated from her. The recreation, which had seemed like the final awful intensification of community life, became an adventure in humanity. As with every other phase of community life, Sister Luke came upon the real meaning of the recreation slowly. She could not at first recognize those twice-daily periods of assembly as the very backbone of the instruction to overcome selfhood. Nor could she recognize that the recreation was the most important exercise in the difficult and delicate art of community living. Until the Reverend Mother Emmanuel appeared one day, the recreation was, for Sister Luke, a static sewing circle that gave her spiritual claustrophobia. Attendance at recreation was obligatory, and you always sat in a circle. The circle was obviously the formation of charity, everyone facing each other to share smiles and words. Nobody left out, not even the ones like Sister Luke who wished to be. Possibly the sole relaxing feature of it, she thought, was that you could take any chair that you wished. That is a loud bug. It was the only place where seating by seniority was waived, where the rule of first come, first served prevailed, except of course for the chair beneath the crucifix, which was reserved for the professed nun who presided. But every other aspect of the recreation was fixed by custom. You came to the recreation with your work bag, made of pieces of worn serge skirts, which even the vestiaire, with all her weaving arts, could no longer mend for wearing use. Your number was chain-stitched on the bag, the quick stitch not anything time-wasting or fancy like feather or cross-stitching. In the bag you carried the work your hands must do while you sat in the circle, but no hands might lie idly folded in the lap. The work, moreover, had to be something manual like darning or knitting. It could not be anything self-absorbing like letter writing, sketching, or reading, which would take your attention from the sisters sitting around you. Usually the sisters took stockings from their bags, the black hand-knitted ones that looked strong as iron, but which wore out quickly around the feet when you were ever on your feet. If all caught up with their darning, there was no knitting in progress, they took out wood spools with pins set into the tops and wove string cords, the cords dropping down through the hole in the spool inch by inch, day by day, until there was enough length to serve as cord for the scissors that swung from every nun's belt. Then it was cut off and a new one began. The only elegant and slightly complicated work permitted in the recreation was that of the sacristy sisters, who mended altar clothes and sacred vestments. Sometimes Sister Luke would look around the circle with a kind of desperate urgency that sought, in some one of her companions' faces, a hint of the inner rebellion she herself felt. She saw everything else but what she sought, smiles on the faces of nursing and teaching sisters who had chosen to sit next to kitchen and laundry workers to draw them forth from shyness and encourage them to talk. She saw the Irish girls, spaced far apart in the circle of charity, never choosing chairs beside each other to give themselves a respite from the patter of French, which was still too quick and colloquial for their learners' ears to catch. Their occasional smiles to each other were like spokes of sunlight cutting across the circle, uniting momentarily 2 points on its lonely impersonal circumference. The words she had beaten back again and again since vesture, words she had dared to say only in the confessional, would speak then so loudly in her thoughts that she would look up with alarm to see if anyone else had heard. I don't belong here. I can't even conform to the life and the recreation. I'm not strong enough. Then one day Reverend Mother Emmanuel visited the novices' recreation, and for Sister Luke the dreaded boring period was never the same again. The superior general came in a few moments after all was seated and busy with small talk and mending. The entire circle rose instantly and bowed as she passed. Not the deep formal reverence accorded her everywhere else in the convent world, but a simple head bow, respectful and instantaneous as any salute to supreme authority sharing a recreation with juniors. "I was detained," she said, acknowledging with her smile the authority of the bells over her as well. Then she sat down, placed her work bag on her lap, and removed her handwork for the period. Sister Luke saw that it was a stocking, but when the wooden egg dropped down to, the long ribbed leg to the heel, she knew it was no stocking the Reverend Mother could ever have worn. There was no heel left in it, only a great oval hole such as the sabots of the garden or laundry nun ground out of the backs of their stockings. That was Sister Luke's only clear clue as to what happened to the recreation when the Superior General sat among them with her back never touching the back of a chair. Charity was visible in her scholarly hands, expertly darning the stocking of one of their humblest sisters. Then it came alive in her voice, the same deep voice that had told them almost a year ago it is a life against nature, but with a personal inflection now as she singled them out one by one and spoke of affairs in their departments, as if she had been working there beside them, in the laundries where those boilers were given trouble again, in the children's hospital where the recent measles outbreak had doubled the work of the nurses, making the problems of each the concern of all. Her peculiar force that was like a fluid flowing out from her and you could follow its passage around... Her peculiar force that was like a fluid flowing out from her and you could follow its passage around the circle as it became visible in smiles on faces that seldom smiled, in easings of tensions, and in the relaxed tones of the white-clad novices whose voices, as the day for the taking vows approached, showed the nervous strain they were laboring under. In subsequent recreations, Sister Luke saw that the Reverend Mother's magnetic eyes could discover struggle and doubts, no matter how deeply these might be hidden. When she discovered them, she made things happen which eased them. She did not always draw the silent struggler into conversation, but seemed rather to speak to her while addressing another. A real physician of the soul, Sister Luke would think. No doctorate in psychology could fully account for that supernatural awareness of the states of others. When she looked at the lean, self-abnegating face bent under a darning egg, she was certain that she was looking at the imitation of Christ, so perfected as to pass almost unperceived. The impression was so strong, and it stirred her so deeply that years later, in chilly communities far removed from the Mother House, Sister Luke could superimpose at will over the figure of the presiding local Mother Superior the spare outlines of the Reverend Mother Emmanuel, and feel again the healing art of those dark eyes piercing through to the inner struggle. Occasionally the Reverend Mother gave the novices a glimpse into their futures when she brought to the recreation a visiting nun from an affiliated house or from one of their missions. The visitors always had the place of honor on her right, but no matter how bursting with eagerness they might be to relate to her every achievement of their schools, hospitals, or sanatoria, the Reverend Mother would not permit them to monopolize her attention. She let them talk just long enough to give the novices a foretaste of the satisfactions they too would have when they would be doers of God's work in distant places. Then, with a tact so skillful and delicate that it seemed no interruption at all, she would turn the conversation back to her novices. Her rare smile assured them that the horizons of their struggling inner worlds were for her every bit as interesting as those of the distant missions. And thus ends chapter 4. So, and I did have that French text, but I didn't practice this week, so I don't know if I want to try that again. Okay. I will try the French text once through now because I need to practice. Okay. So this is from, I mentioned last week. Let's see. I see a little emoji there. I'm not sure what it is, but so last week I brought up this little French text. It's just this like brief part of a French interview she did. I think around 1957. I think around the nun story time, and since most of the words were things I either know or can figure out, I decided I would try to get better at reciting this little interview. And at some point, I'd like to record that as a video for my channel. Just I don't know, make a little black and white video me doing this interview, but I really have to memorize it. So, oh, it's a star. Thanks. We'll see. There's still hope. I feel like a star with these videos. I mean, I didn't expect these to be so popular. Before I get into this, actually, I wanted to ask any suggestions here, because I was thinking, should I be doing some other kinds of videos, or maybe with another phone? I could also like live stream on some other platform. Like, I know it's got a bad reputation or a good one, depending how you look on it. But like OnlyFans, I could have some kind of OnlyFans thing going on at the same time. 'Cause I want to reach more people, and I don't know, people seem to enjoy this. So I was thinking of other ways I could kind of expand this idea, since it seems so popular. So if you have ideas, let me know. Something. I had a question for smokers, and you can like reply in the comments or something at any point. Something I always noticed and thought about. So you see smokers. I'm not a smoker, so out and about in the street, normal times, and someone will come along and ask if they can have a cigarette. And the answer is usually yes, that I have noticed. I don't think I've ever seen someone say no. Yeah. However, my question is, why? If you were eating like a bag of cookies out in the street, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I could really use a cookie right now, and I go up to you and be like, can I have a cookie? You would look at me like I'm crazy, and you probably wouldn't give me one. But cigarettes, you'll do that. And I think they're more expensive than cookies. So I always kind of wondered about that. I'm just going to ask all you out there who might be smokers, why? Why can I ask for a cigarette and not a cookie? Or anything else? Like, I would like to try this. Just go out in the street. Although people aren't usually sitting around like eating cookies. Maybe like on a patio. But I just was thinking that. Like, you can ask for a cigarette and people are like, sure. But nothing else. You would give me a cookie? See? It's a weird idea. Like, you go around and ask people for... I'm trying to think like what else like people actually stand outside and do that you could like ask them for. Because yeah, it would be a funny little experiment. I guess just wander around and see what people are doing, or if they're eating something, like, can I have some? Like, I don't know. Just something I noticed. I mean, it's kind of nice. Like, you can, it's a conversation starter. Can I have a cigarette, or do you have a lighter? I've been asked that, and sadly, I don't carry a lighter around usually. No, I don't smoke. I smoke cannabis some nights if I can't sleep, or if I want to relax, or something like that. I like cannabis. I am a firm believer that should be totally legal. Not just for smoking, but for medicinal everything. I have fortunately not had much in my life that I've needed to apply cannabis to, but I think it's just like a magical plant that can do everything. I mean, hemp itself can be made into so many things, and then smoking it, or wait, there was something else. Oh yes, hemp seeds. Hemp seeds are what? Smoke last today? You mean like one more? Maybe while I'm reading French? Fine, I'll do one more while I'm reading the French. What was I saying? Oh yes, hemp seeds, those are really good for you. There's like every part of that plant is just so good for you. I mean smoking anything is like not, but so many benefits. I think that should be completely legal. I don't know why cigarettes are legal and that's not. Yeah, I mean, that's what I can see. I mean, I didn't hang out long enough to like watch where it goes, or if they hang out, or if they walk away or anything. I just noticed that people share cigarettes, and I can see how that is a way to make conversation with someone you might want to start a conversation with. Yeah. Yeah, but you could start a conversation with cookies too. Yeah, exactly. We got to start this, okay? We got to start like carrying around cookies and sharing our cookies, or I don't know, candy of some kind. Anything. Yeah. that sugar is healthy at all. Hi, little kitty. Oh my gosh, the neighbor cat. She comes around and says hi. Hi. She said hello to my cat today. I was taking him on a walk in the yard. Hi. You're not going to let me pick you up, are you? Do you want a pet? Come here. It's this black cat. She's got little white paws. I don't know if I can pick her up. Hi. Do you want attention? We call her Darkness. Like, hello, Darkness, my old friend. You've come to talk to me again. But that's not her name. Hello. Don't, careful. Nice to see you. Where'd you go? You're behind me? I'm going to read the French now. Do you understand French or just Dutch? Where'd you go? There you are. Okay. You do that. I like having neighbor cats, like, and dogs. Like if there were stray dogs, I love like sharing pets. It's great. But I do have my own cats now and trying to get them to get along. I don't want any fights. She said hello to Oliver today. No, he does that alone. He just randomly goes outside and smokes. But I'm gonna do a video some point soon while the weather's still good with him like coaching me on smoking. I thought that might be funny, even though I'm doing perfectly well on my own. But yeah, but he won't be on camera. But no, I don't really smoke with him. Actually, in the evenings when we watch Arrested Development, I will get out my little Gandalf pipe and smoke some cannabis, and he'll have his vape. So, Darkness. I just inhaled that. Hi. I'm going to speak now. Okay. So, the French. Okay. Oui, enfant. Oui, je suis commencé ma carrière comme danseuse de ballet. J'ai étudié le ballet pendant des années. J'ai dansé à Londres et un jour, j'ai eu la chance de faire 2-3 jours au studio dans un film et après ça, 4-5 jours, après ça, un petit rôle, après ça, un rôle plus grand et tout d'un coup, 51, j'ai fait un essai pour Vacances romaines pour William Wyler, le metteur en scène, comme vous connaissez. Et en même temps, la même année, j'ai joué Gigi à Broadway à New York. I mean, it's getting a little easier. Definitely will take some practice. This is like the only French I have practiced since coming here, like over a year ago. It's really sad. I want to find a group of people to practice French with because I don't want to completely lose it. And the Dutch, the Dutch, the Dutch. There's a lot to do, a lot to do. When did I take my, oh, yes, since we chatted last, I took my first part of the driver's test here. I did great on the first 2 parts, but not the third, and I failed, and I have to take it again in like 2 weeks. How do you recommend learning French? That's the thing, like I started so long ago with just the audio part of, Pimsleur. I got like this huge set on eBay and it didn't come with like the manual, so I was just listening and I would learn some that way. And then when I was in France, I got into some cheap local classes. We need 3D glasses here. And I want to learn how to blow like donuts. Yeah, then I got into classes in Paris. If you go there or anywhere in France, be aware that in the fall, like September, they'll have like sign-ups and like a whole little festive thing in each town, and you can find French classes to sign up for, and they're usually very cheap. One I found through a friend in Paris, and I mean, if anyone needs classes in Paris, let me know. I can give you information. I loved it. Small groups, like 3 different levels. These retired teachers. I don't know if they were actually teachers, but they're volunteers, and it's really chill, and I loved it, and really cheap, like 20 euros for the year, maybe 25 now. My group in Fontainebleau was larger than the one in Paris, but also good. They're lovely people and I keep in touch. So that's mainly how I would learn, and also just being in France, and I would go out and most of my friends spoke English, so my French never really got that great. I didn't speak it a lot. I was never really in conversation with it. End of that cigarette. And I'm afraid the Dutch won't go very well if I can't get into classes and everything, but I found a couple things I need to spend more time on, like YouTube videos and some books and stuff, and I need to do more of that too. And perhaps I should include some of that in these videos as more practice with Dutch. But I'm just not there yet. But the classes were helpful. It's like being around people, especially, I mean, the classes that were like very structured and a little more expensive, and like you're going through these workbooks and there's just too many people. I did not enjoy those. It might work for some people, but the more casual groups, where they really spend time helping you, and you can like kind of get off the topic and like talk about something and ask questions. Like in French, you need to know a little bit because usually they don't want to speak in English or they can't. But that's what I did. And now that I'm in the beginning of learning a new language, I'm kind of like, I don't know where to start. I started with the French so long ago. So yes, I feel like the starting a language is, I don't know. It's tough. But I mean, I guess at first you get all excited because you're learning so many new words. And then I think all the languages, you kind of have these little plateaus. You're like, I'm stuck. Oh, I can progress. Oh, I'm stuck again. I'm not going to learn more. I suck. Well, if that's helpful. All right. Let's see. So yes, I started an account at buymeacoffee.com/KendallBrenneman if you want to, support me in my channel. And you can go check out my other videos and subscribe to my channel so you get all the notifications. Dutch music. I'll have to look that up. I'm afraid, like, with the French music, it took me a while before I could really follow, because music, there are a couple songs I decided to learn, and then I forgot them. But it's different. Like, I definitely learned words. Like, I learned the French version of Let It Go from Frozen. Libéré, délivré. So I learned new words through that, but at the same time, songs can also be a little poetic, so you're not really learning how people speak. But yeah, I look forward to understanding some Dutch music, if it's any good. Is it? I'm sorry. I actually haven't heard much Dutch music. So, but yeah, and just a mix of different things and just see what happens and learn things from different sources. Yeah. Yes. I have a friend who's a linguist, but he doesn't know Dutch and he doesn't like Dutch. But yeah. It'd be so nice if languages were a little easier to learn. For some people, I think they are. Or maybe if you can dedicate, like, well, I was told here there is like a monastery, a convent of nuns. And for like 20,000 euros, you spend like a month or two with them, like intensively learning Dutch. Thank you. I want to get to the point here where I like embody Audrey, because I'm still going back to my own, mannerisms and everything. I'm not completely pretending to be her here, but at some point I will. And that will be fun. But yeah, if I had 20,000 euros and, a pet sitter, first, I have no idea what it's like to do that, but it sounds pretty cool to me. If it was not 20,000 euros, going to learn Dutch intensively with a bunch of nuns, I'm up for that. But yeah, perhaps if these videos earn me enough money and I can set aside 2 months or whatever it is, maybe I can do that. That'd be excellent. And I think it's starting to rain, so I should pack this up now. And I will be back next week, as long as it doesn't rain. Yes, I think I don't have anything planned for next week, so yeah. I'll see you then. In the meantime, go subscribe to my channel, watch other things, and What was I going to say? I forget now. So I will see you later. Thanks for joining me again. This has been fun. Have a good weekend. Bye.